Howdy, it's Mr. Pete again, your YouTube shop teacher. Take a look at some of my colleagues' channels, including Jimmy DeResta, all of these guys I saw recently over in Ohio. But what I'm going to do today is some nickel plating, some electroplating, and this is tips number 390, and it's devoted to nickel plating and then bluing with gun blue that small tap wrench that I made in the previous 3 videos. So watch all 4 videos, all 4 parts, 387 through 390. 390 is what you have now for the complete story on how to make that tap wrench. Now in another recent video, 383, I showed how to do nickel plating, and in that one I nickel plated this Bell center punch, and you saw me make this last year in another video. I do not remember the name, but look at the beautiful job that this nickel plating kit has done for me. So let's get on with that. The first part of the video will be nickel plating, and then the second part, gun bluing of this project, the tap wrench. In those previous videos, I basically made a copy of the STARRETT number 174 tap wrench. You watched me do that, I hope. This is the original STARRETT, and these are the projects that I made in that video. One I made in the video, the other was my sample, my prototype, and I finished that off camera. So I'll lay one of them aside for bluing purposes, and this is the one that I'm going to nickel plate. Now, plating requires that the work be absolutely clean, or the plating will delaminate. So it has to be mechanically clean, that is no oil or rust or anything like that, and then chemically clean too. So I will use, first of all, and I'm not going to show that, a degreaser such as brake cleaner, and the directions say not to use that unless you can get it all off. And then I'm going to use Super Green, I think it's called. I'll show you that in a second, which is a very strong detergent. And then you must use gloves. You don't want to touch this. You don't want to contaminate it again once it's been clean. And I use hot water and a fingernail brush and all of that stuff to get it just as clean as possible. Now if there are any scratches, and there are some, this is not a perfect finish, but you will hide nothing. For instance, see those little scratches there? Those will show up through the plating or through the bluing or through the spray paint. You cannot hide your sins. So this will be done in 2 pieces. I'll take that apart. And now let me talk just a little bit about the plating equipment, which I did in the other video, but I cannot count on everybody having watched that. This is oily, so it has to be cleaned thoroughly. Kevin, who wishes to remain anonymous, sent this to me out of Lyons, New York, and it's the Caswell Science Plating Kit, nickel plating. Now this is to be used in schools, or well, it can be done at home too, but I think it's designed for schools because it even says teaching possibilities there. But they're very brief instructions, only 2 pages, and then there's 8 pages of MSD sheets, which mean nothing to me. I don't intend to read those. Those are just warnings. But rather than go through this, I'm going to explain it to you as I go along. I am not going to explain the details and the theory of electroplating. I'm only going to show you how I do it to nickel plate this. And when it comes out, it shines like a new nickel. But you can see the scratches there that showed right through the plating. Now let me show you what came originally with the kit. This beaker, and I used that in the other video, but since this is such a slender project, I would rather use something like this that is more slender, so that I have enough of this. And they gave me 2 bottles of the plug and plate nickel solution, and it doesn't really tell what this is, but it sure works well. So I'm going to use this glass here. Also included were the little power supply, and that's just a wall wart like you would use to charge just about any modern electronic device. And there's a jumper cable, and well, let's see, a stick, and a few other things came with it that really aren't important. But what is important were these nickel anodes. So it's just nickel in a sheet is all it is, and I curved it so it'll fit in here. and cut little notches, which I won't use. I used it before. I had never seen pure nickel. I didn't realize it was this soft. I know very little about it. There's the water line from the previous experiment. Now during that experiment, if you haven't seen the other video, I took a piece of cold rolled steel, this is just common steel, cleaned it real well and plated it so you can see where the nickel plating is and the steel. Now plating does two things, it beautifies and protects from corrosion. There's a piece of copper which I cleaned up, and boy did that plate nice. Like I said, I can't use that vessel. This is what I was going to use. I went up to my wife's cupboard and found this. That's something that she uses. Well, I don't know why she uses. I guess it's a vase. It's a vase. I like the heavy base, but it wasn't convenient for me to use the anodes in there. And I want the anodes to be on each side. So I continued on it. Then I went into her place where she keeps her fine china. And now I remember this was a wedding present. I got a dozen of these cut glass 49 years ago. And you know what? She'll never miss this. Even if I break it, you know, she'll be down to 11. So what? Okay. So I took the anodes and made a pretty good fit there. You see that? Quite good fit. However, I need to keep them from touching the bottom. So I'm just going to use that clip there and another clip here. And then the positive lead from the wall wart will go to one side like that. And then this jumper, since these are not touching, will go from one side to the other, just connecting the two. And then this is a piece of brass. It could be copper. It could be almost anything. They gave a flimsy little stick. Remember, the work will be the cathode. So I'm going to lay this because it will conduct across like that, and the black will connect to that, the negative. I'll get a better connection off of camera. And then I will suspend the work with these clean pieces of copper wire, which in fact were pieces of magnet wire. Now, magnet wire has varnish on it, so I removed that with a flame, and then I wiped it real quickly with emery cloth so that it's bright and conductive. And the work, the cathode, will be suspended from the brass rod into the solution. So let me get that all set up. Take a look at what I've got so far. There are the two anodes, the nickel sheet metal. Now it wouldn't matter if they touch one another. In fact they do, but I can't count on that being a good connection. So the jumper goes between the two. And these clips are just used to try to hold those anodes in position because they're a bit unruly and the glass is so slippery. The container can be glass or plastic or anything that is non-conductive. You certainly can't use a tin can for that. Then the positive from the power supply goes to the plate. So you can see the two are connected together. Now across here and between them is a piece of brass, and the negative will go to that. Now the reason I put tape on there is in case they should get jostled and touch the anodes, I don't want a short circuit. The voltage is so low, I mean there is no problem in terms of a shock or a spark or anything like that, but it would stop the plating process. And then after I clean the project, it's going to be hung from the rack here and lowered into the electrolyte. So I'm going to go over to the sink and clean these parts thoroughly like I talked about in hot water, and come back in a few minutes and we'll get started. The project was thoroughly cleaned, first with a degreaser, and secondly with what they recommended in the instructions, this product called Simple Green. I never heard of it, but I sent my wife down to Kroger's to get that for me. It was about $5, and really it was a diversionary tactic because while she was there, that's when I went through the cupboards and got this cut glass anniversary present. So now these are ready to hang, and you must be very careful not to touch them. Well, I should say do not touch them unless you have nitrile gloves on. And I advise you to wear gloves anyway. I don't know what's in these chemicals, so you need to protect yourself with what you breathe and with what you touch on your skin. So I'm going to hang those from the brass rod here off camera because it's kind of awkward. I might point out that you cannot hang these from string or any non-conductive material. It has to be wire, like copper wire or something, where the electricity can pass through, so it has a path to follow. Now you can see how they hang in there, and they are not touching the bottom, nor are they touching the anodes. Remember, they are the cathodes. And I don't want them to touch one another. I've been in many plating plants over my life, years and years ago, and observed some of the techniques, and I remember the smell and the corrosiveness because they used acids to dip the product in in order to clean it. It was a many-step process. Now I will add the electrolyte. Here we go. And I need just enough to cover them. And believe it or not, that did cover them, just barely. I'm going to put just a little bit more in. Notice that I used a screw. There, now they're totally immersed. A screw in the end of the tap wrench. Now all that's left to do is to plug it in. Now I've already put the negative to the cathode and the positive is to the anode, and I will plug it in, 110 volts. This could be done with batteries. And remember, this is only 4.5 volts. And even reads a little less on the voltmeter, which I'll hook up here in a little while. Now, in the directions it said that there would be bubbling, but I never did observe any bubbling, and that disappointed me. I don't know why, but I wanted to see action. I'll pull it out of there in about 10 minutes. And we'll see what the progress is, but I plan on leaving it in there about 2 hours altogether, and naturally I'll have the camera off, or it would be like watching flowers grow. Not dandelions, they grow so fast you can watch them grow. I plugged in that ugly green clock at exactly 12 o'clock. That's not the time, it's just for reference. And that clock has a story too that was in one of my other videos. Maybe I haven't published the video yet. "13 minutes has passed. There is a bit of a foam or a froth on the bottom, and it's really hard to tell with the light in here, but plating is going on. Alright, back in there, and I'll be back in a couple hours. Well, it's been almost 2 hours, and looking down into the tank, you can see that there is some foaming action, some bubbling. So I'll disconnect the power, and by the way, that is quite warm, and we'll lift them out of there. Wow, that is pretty. That is pretty. Let me go over and wash them real well. I'll come right back. I just want to rinse them in hot water, get all the chemical off of them. This is the plated one. This is unplated, the one that I will blue. You really can't tell the difference so much on the monitor, but here, looking at it with my bare eyes, there's quite a remarkable difference between the plated one and the unplated one. Again, it did not get rid of any machining marks, or filing marks, or polishing marks. Several observations now. One is that on the screw, notice that it didn't get plated on the end. You recall that this was a separate piece that was held in by Loctite. So I suspect that there was a Loctite residue on there that prevented plating not only on the insert but a little bit on the end of the thread. Now that's no big deal to me at all. But when I go to put the thread in there, it will not thread in. Why? Well, I suspect that maybe the plating on the thread has enlarged, so I will run a tap in here first to see if that makes any difference, but I doubt that there was any plating taking place on the inside, so let me do that first. And did you know that when they make nuts and bolts that are to be plated, that they are threaded with special tools? In the case of a tap, they call it plating tap, that allows for the extra thickness of the plating. But I don't think this plating would be even 1/1000th thick. That would be my guess. It's very, very thin. Let me run the tap through. I ran the tap into the plated one. It made no difference at all, but this is the other screw from this one, and it goes right in very freely. Conversely, I took the plated one and tried to insert it in the unplated, and it does not go in. So there is plating on the thread which is preventing that. So I am going to run a die over that, but of course that will take the plating off, so that grieves me a little bit, but so be it. Well, I got it to go in a little way by running the die over it, but in fact, if I had it to do over, I would not have plated the threaded part. And I may make another screw for this with an unthreaded or unplated thread and just plate the knurled portion of it. So, but I think that makes a handsome looking tap wrench. So that's concludes part A of this video. I'm going to go right into part B, which will be the bluing with gun blue of this one. Now, you've seen me do that in other videos, so it'll be a very brief part of this video, applying the blue. I won't belabor that because you've seen it so many times. Okay, see you in a few minutes. Okay, this is part B of putting the finish on the little tap wrench, and I already did the one, of course, in the first part A with nickel plate. Now I'm going to do the second one with gun bluing. You've seen me do this before with gun bluing, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm going to do this real quickly, but you can get this perma blue and in different colors at Walmart or Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's or any of those places. It's pretty common. It can be dangerous. Children should not use this. There are certain chemicals in there that are corrosive, so be careful with that. So you need that. I'm going to dip, so I've got a small diameter, a tube where I can dip something slender, because I only had about a half a bottle of this, but of course you can put it on with Q-tips. You've seen me do that as well. We got alcohol, we got oil. So I'm going to do one at a time here, and I'm going to go over to the sink off camera and scrub this thoroughly with that green stuff that I showed you, that detergent. Then I'm going to clean it with alcohol and then ready to dip it. Remember that you can't touch this once you've cleaned it, because there are oils in your skin. So rubber gloves would be good too. Maybe I'll put some on. Although they're so clumsy, I really don't like working with gloves. I've cleaned it in hot water in the sink with that simple green detergent. Now, and then I dried it. This is alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. And you're assured of quality here and purity. Then dip in water. I'm reading the directions off of the back. So we just got good clean water here. I'll let that dry real quickly. I'm just using cotton twine. Now it's dry, and I'm going to dip it in here and let it remain for about 1 minute. Now you can see why I use this slender test tube. It's possible I will get no reaction right around where the Loctite was. Remember the other one? Although it looks good in black or blue, doesn't it? Now, according to the directions, you can take this out, rinse it thoroughly, and then repeat the process if you want a darker finish. But this looks pretty dark. Okay, it's been a little over a minute. Take it out of here, and in a nice clean glass. Now this is just cold water. I'm going to dip it. After I make sure that it's thoroughly clean, I'm going to take it over to the sink off camera and wash it with hot water. Now the reason I use hot water is when I take it away from the sink and wipe it a little bit, the water's going to dry real quickly. Then I'm going to come back and oil it. Now you can use any kind of oil, household oil, but for best results use Starrett tool and instrument oil. It's used by mechanics, homeowners, and sportsmen worldwide. I'll be back in a minute. But you can see that boy, that's a good dark blue or black. That's pretty. If you have streaks or spots, that means you didn't have it clean enough. Remember, cleanliness is next to godliness. Only 3 things matter when you blue and you plate. Only 3 things: cleanliness, cleanliness, and cleanliness. There it is. I'm going to oil it immediately. Notice that some black came off on my hands. I don't know what that's all about. And I'm going to rub it in real well. Be back in a minute after I wash up real well. Not very black on the end. What happened there? And next comes the body of the tap wrench, so I'm going back to the sink and scrub this real well, rinse it, come back, clean it with alcohol, dip it. In other words, repeat the process with this. I'm back, and I think I got the tap wrench as clean as humanly possible. And I'm going to dip it in here. Hope it doesn't, and it doesn't. Notice that I have a screw in there and then string. And again, about 1 minute. Okay, that's long enough. in the rinse again. And under hot water, and I'll be right back. It's drying off, and we got to get oil on there fast. And I even want a little oil in the hole. Okay, I'm going to wash up my hands and wipe off the excess oil. We'll have a final look at it. But I would say it's looking pretty good. Thanks for sticking with me through this long 4-part video. Make sure you watch all 4 parts. Thank you for those of you that support my channel. I was kind of surprised that this plated screw that I used for the dipping process took bluing. There is the original STARRETT. Here's the tin plated one, and thank you, Kevin, for supplying that nice Coswell plating kit. Did I say tin plating? Nickel plating. It's as shiny as a new nickel. And then finally and last and not least is the gun blue birchwood Casey. Let me know in the comments which finish you prefer, or do you like to leave it in the raw metal? I don't know what they put on the STARRETT that there's no rust over the years. They probably used the finest products that they make. But you'll see these in my videos as I use them with small taps, number 10 usually and under. Maybe some of you will make some of these wrenches in various sizes from the dimensions that I gave you in the earlier parts. So, kind of pretty, I'll have to confess, but the credit lies with STARRETT, who has, well, they are the world's greatest tool maker, self-professed, of course. This is Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, saying thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.